Part 1. The girl who always looked up every evening at 5:17 p.m. Julian sat by the same window in Café Aurora, a quiet little place tucked between a flower shop and a music store in a corner of Paris few tourists ever found. His laptop always open, his coffee always half full, and his gaze never on the screen. He watched her. She wasn't beautiful in the way magazines describe, but she had something far rarer: presence. The kind that fills the room quietly, like the smell of fresh rain or the sound of a piano note lingering in the air. She always walked by the cafe with her chin slightly lifted, as if the sky was speaking to her in a language only she could hear. Julian called her the girl who always looked up. He had watched her pass for 22 days straight. On the 23rd day, she stopped. It was raining lightly, the kind of rain that barely kissed your skin, and she was standing outside the window, just on the edge of the awning's shadow. She wasn't looking up, she was looking at him. For a second, Julian thought he had imagined it. But no, her eyes met his, curious and searching. Then, with a sudden smile, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The little bell above the door sang like it was announcing the beginning of something real. "You always sit here," she said, pointing at the empty chair across from him. "And you always look at me." Julian blinked. I didn't mean to." She raised a hand to stop him. "It's okay. I like it. It made me feel ... seen." She paused, then smiled again. "Can I sit?" He nodded, his heart thudding louder than the rain on the window. "I'm Mira," she said, extending her hand. "Julian," he replied, touching her fingers gently. And emotion he haw outside. The rain kept falling. Ian's. Julian didn't know what to say next. For a writer, he was embarrassingly short on words. Mira didn't seem to mind. She sat across from him, pulling her damp scarf off and tucking a strand of wet hair behind her ear. "I always wondered if you were writing about me," she said, glancing at his laptop. Julian swallowed. "Maybe. I guess I didn't think you'd notice." She leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I notice everything, especially the quiet things. Especially the people who look like they're trying not to." Julian looked down. That was exactly what he was doing. "Ever I lost someone," he said, so she didn't ask who. She, and suddenly the cafe, the street outside, the sound of the coffee machine, all of it faded. There was only that moment. Shared grief, shared loneliness. "Shared EMW, I come this way every day," she said after a pause, hoping someone might notice I'm still here. The Julian looked at her, really looked, eyes and "I noticed," he whispered. She nodded once, as if something inside her relaxed. Then she looked at his laptop. "Write me in," she said with a small smile, "but don't make me perfect." "I want to be real." Julian's hands hovered over the keyboard. "Real is all I see when I look at you." Outside, the rain began to slow. Inside, a story began, not on paper, but between two souls slowly daring to feel again. And as they sat in silence, something beautiful filled the space between them, a quiet, unspoken promise that emotion, even silent, could heal. The next day, she returned, same cafe, same table, same soft smile, but this time she brought a small, worn notebook with her. She placed it between them like a peace offering, or perhaps a key. "I used to write," Mira said, fingers tracing the edges of the cover. "But after he died, the words stopped making sense. They felt fake, too clean for what I was feeling." Julian understood that better than she could know. He gently opened the notebook. The handwriting was a little messy, like thoughts were trying to escape faster than the pen could move. There were fragments, half-written poems, confessions, sudden questions. Do ghosts sleep in our memories? What if love doesn't die, it just changes rooms? Would he recognize me now, after the grief? Julian closed the book softly. This is beautiful, Mira." She looked at him, eyes clouded. It's unfinished. So are most things worth loving, he replied. That afternoon passed in the kind of silence that doesn't need filling. She read over his shoulder as he wrote. He paused to steal glances, sometimes catching her smiling, sometimes seeing her stare out the window as if looking for something she'd lost in the rain. At one point, she whispered, "Do you believe we can fall in love again?" After we've already lost, he thought for a long moment before answering. "I don't think love ever repeats," he said, "but I think it can begin again, quietly, without lightning." Just a soft return of feeling, she nodded. Then, "I think I'm starting to feel again." Julian reached across the table and touched her hand, a brief, gentle contact. "Me too." The bell above the cafe door rang as another customer entered, but the sound barely registered. In that moment, in that small corner of the world, two broken people realized they weren't broken anymore. They were becoming. The days that followed were soft, not dramatic. Not filled with declarations or grand moments, but gentle, healing days. Julian and Mira met at the same cafe, same table, every evening. They shared stories, silence, sadness, and something new, hope. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they just listened to the rain. One evening, the sky was unusually clear. No rain, just stars, shy and scattered. Mira was quiet, unusually so. Her hands played with the notebook she always brought. "I got a letter today," she said finally, eyes fixed on the night outside. Julian looked up, his heart already sensing what was coming. "It's from an art program in Florence. I applied months ago and forgot about it. They accepted me. 6 months. Full scholarship." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. Full of things unsaid. "When do you leave?" he asked softly. 3 days. He nodded slowly, eyes on the table. "You should go." "I know." A pause. "I don't want to leave this," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't want to stay broken just to keep it either." Julian swallowed, then reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "You were never mine to keep," he said gently, "but I'm glad I got to hold you." Even for a little while, tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. They sat in silence for the rest of the night. On her last day in Paris, she returned to the cafe one final time. Julian was already there, a small wrapped package on the table between them. She opened it carefully. Inside was a printed book, not polished, not published. Just bound pages titled, "A Silent Emotion in the Cafe Window" by Julian Hart. Inspired by Mira, she ran her fingers across the title page. Then looked at him. "It's not finished," she said. "It's not supposed to be," he replied. They stood, held each other. Not with desperation, but with deep gratitude. No promises, no forever, just a shared truth. Some people aren't meant to stay, but they're meant to change you. As Mira disappeared into the Paris crowd, notebook clutched to her chest, Julian sat back down at their table. The rain began to fall again, but this time it felt like music. And Julian smiled, because some emotions are silent, but they echo forever. The end.